Hello, this is Dr. Jeffrey Thibert, Assistant Director of National Fellowships in the Center for Undergraduate Scholarly Engagement, or CUSE, at the University of Notre Dame. And for the next little bit in this video, I will be discussing the application process for the Fulbright English Teaching Assistantship grant. This workshop is designed for individuals who have gone through the screening application process already at the University of Notre Dame. If you have not yet gone through that process, or if this is really your first encounter with any information about the Fulbright English Teaching Assistantship, I would encourage you to pause this video, bookmark it for later, and view some of the other videos we have that introduce you to the Fulbright English Teaching Assistantship and go through the screening application. In order to do that, you will go to fellows.nd.edu, and I will pull that up here so you can see what that looks like. You'll go to this website, and if you go to the fellowships menu and you pull down and go to Fulbright and click on that, you will see a set of information about the Fulbright. If you scroll down, you'll see information about the English Teaching Assistantship Award. There's also a study research version of the Fulbright, which you might be interested in instead. You can only apply for one in any given year, so you can read more about that here. But if you click on these links that say online, they will take you to a page where you can access the information session and the screening application workshop for the Fulbright Award that interests you. If you go down to the bottom, you can see the steps that you'll need to go through if you're interested in applying through Notre Dame, and any Notre Dame undergraduate or undergraduate alum should apply through us at CUSE. You can download the screening application instructions, screening application advice, and the screening application form here at this website. And so, again, if this is your first encounter with any information about the Fulbright, I would encourage you to step back and view the information session, the screening application workshop, and complete the screening application. You will also find information here about deadlines that we have that are relevant to you. I should note that if you are viewing this after May 14, 2014, or in some future year, you can always visit this site to find out the current deadlines. If it is after one of those deadlines but before the campus application deadline, you can contact us to see if we're still accepting applications. You can contact us at fellows, which is plural, at nd.edu. If you email us there, we will be able to get in touch with you about your questions. Now, as I said, assuming you've gone through the screening application process and you have had an initial meeting with a Fulbright program administrator at Notre Dame, then you are ready to begin working on the application in earnest. And the way this typically works for people is they begin the initial steps of the application in late spring, and then most of the application work actually occurs over the summer so that things are ready to go around mid-August, which is when the campus deadline is here. So this will be useful to you as you go through and work on the application. You can, of course, pause this video at any time to review something that has been said. We'll be looking at some sample applications that have been successful in past years later, and of course you'll be able to pause at that point and look over those applications in more detail. For now, let's start with an application advice document that you will receive once you go through the screening application process if you haven't already. Let's bring that up here. And again, you will get a copy of this document, so there's no need, you might be able to refer to it as you go through this if you have it on your computer or on your device. So the first thing to know here is before you begin. Now, it's important, I think, that we go through this because much of what makes a competitive Fulbright application is determined, actually, I think, before you even start writing your statements. And that's because your choice of country matters quite a bit. And that applies to the English teaching assistantship here. And again, it also applies to the study research grant. I will not be referring to the study research grant anymore during this session, but there will be an online session about that application that will be accessible on the same page where you found this one. So if you want a session focused specifically on the study research grant, you should view that. So now, here are 3 links to websites that will be very useful to you as you go through the application process. The first one you should read before anything else. It is a brief summary of the major purposes of the Fulbright program. And it's important that you know these purposes well, because this is what you're applying for. And it's very important to note that the Fulbright is not just about the English teaching, but it's really about promoting cultural exchange, promoting positive relations between the U.S. and other countries through a form of educational exchange. So that's the overall goal here. They don't just want people who would be effective English teaching assistants. They also want people who would be able to serve as effective cultural ambassadors of the United States when they are abroad. And so that's very important to keep in mind as you're working on the application, because you will of course need to demonstrate that you would be an effective English teaching assistant, but you will also need to demonstrate that you would be an effective cultural ambassador, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go. So once you feel that you understand the purposes, another key resource will be these country summaries. This is the second bullet point here. And this is important because you want to make sure that you meet the preferences of the country to which you are applying. And this matters because the countries do have different preferences. Some countries will prefer people who have undergraduate degrees in particular areas. Some will prefer candidates who have some teaching or tutoring experience. Some will say that classroom teaching experience is highly preferred, so not just tutoring, but classroom teaching. Some will give preference to people who are planning to teach English as a second language in their careers. Other countries will have no preferences at all. Some countries will also have language preferences. For instance, many of the Latin American countries have English teaching assistantship grants and require at least an intermediate proficiency in Spanish. That's also something that happens in other countries too. I believe France and Germany have similar requirements, but some countries, like at least in recent years, Malaysia and Korea, have not had these kinds of preferences. They're interested more in getting mature, independent, flexible people who want to teach English and have some sense of why they would be able to do it, but also are looking for an immersive cultural experience that will allow them to serve as cultural ambassadors. So it is very important that you choose your country wisely, because although they rarely say that things are required of candidates, they will say that things are preferred, highly preferred, and they mean this. Especially at the country level, these things will come into play in the decision-making process. And so ultimately your best chance of being successful is to apply to a country where you meet the preferences. Now, if your heart is set on a particular country and you feel that you can make a very strong case why that country is of interest to you, and you don't meet the preferences, but you feel that you can overcome that by making a compelling case, then of course you can still apply. They do just say that certain things are preferences. But you are frankly putting yourself at a disadvantage if you don't meet those preferences in the candidate profile, because they may get enough qualified applicants who do meet those preferences, and then all things being equal, you would not be considered. So do keep that in mind. Usually when thinking about countries, I encourage people to go through the Fulbright site to look at these country summaries, and start with a list of places you might be interested in, and then based on the country summaries, kind of narrow things down. And then actually there's a place on the Fulbright website to view statistics. It's in the upper right-hand corner of any given Fulbright page, and if you're really equally set on different countries, you might look at those statistics to see how competitive the countries are, because different countries have different levels of competitiveness. There might be some countries where there's essentially a 50% chance of receiving the English teaching assistantship if you apply. Other countries, the chances may be more like 10%. It depends on the number of people who apply and the number of grants that are available. So I encourage you to take those statistics into account, while remembering that if you have a very strong application, you will kind of beat those random odds. The third bullet here is the applicant section of the Fulbright website, and if you go there, there's a whole section that's just about the English teaching assistantship. Read all of that material. They do a great job of letting you know what they want to see in the application and what they expect from the different parts of the application. So this material is coming directly from Fulbright, so it's very important that you kind of internalize as much of this information as you can before you work on your application, so that you really know what they're expecting to see in the application. If you follow the advice that's on the Fulbright website, it will make the application much more straightforward. Now, another point here before you begin is that most ETA programs expect you to engage in some kind of independent project during your time. Now, this is another thing that will vary from one country to another. Some countries will explicitly say that you have to propose a small independent project in your statement of grant purpose that you write as part of the application. Some countries will not say that explicitly, but given that in many countries the teaching experience is essentially part-time, it's 16 to 30 hours a week typically, they expect you to use that additional time that you'll have to participate in civic engagement through academic work, vocational work, service work, or anything along those lines. So it's important to think about how you would be engaged in the place beyond the classroom, and it helps to do some research. You can, in some cases, have a vague idea where you will be placed if you receive the assistantship. In some cases, it's very open, but you might do some research into what the possibilities are, and think about trying to propose independent projects that align with your interests. So if you were involved with a certain cause, for instance, at Notre Dame, you might want to propose that you would continue working in that general area in the host country through some organization that's there. You could propose to take a class if you were going to be situated at or near a university. You could propose a small internship, and in many cases you can even reach out to people ahead of time, even now, and see if that might be a possibility, and then in your application you can say, I've reached out to so-and-so about using some of my time beyond the classroom to do X. The point is that whatever you propose to do, it should be something that facilitates civic engagement, that facilitates cultural engagement in the country. That is crucial to a compelling Fulbright application. Now let's move down here to the abstract, and this is getting into the components of the application. So we'll go through the major components of the English teaching assistantship application and talk about some general advice before we look at a few examples of ETA applications that have been successful in the past. So one element that's very important is the abstract, and I highlight this because it's sometimes, it's only a paragraph. It seems almost like an aside in the online application form you will fill out. And by the way, the online application is typically available starting usually between May 1st and October 15th or so of any given year. So after May 1st, you would want to register for the online application, and you will get a document with the timeline for the Fulbright once you go through the screening application process at Notre Dame. Now, the abstract, again, it's tempting to sort of see it as an aside, but I've heard that some reviewers will actually not go on to read the rest of the application if the abstract is not compelling. It appears on the first page of the application along with some other basic information, and so it's important that you take this seriously. This will be really the first thing that the reviewers read, aside from some general information about who you are and all of this. And so you want to start off strong. So granted, it might not be something you write until near the end of the process, but you want it to be a summary of the key points from your statement of grant purpose. It should give them a pretty clear idea of why you are doing the English teaching assistantship, why you've chosen a particular country, and what you hope to get out of the experience. Now, granted, you won't have much room to do all this, but if you can give a very brief overview of this, that will situate the rest of your application. They will also ask you to describe your plans for civic engagement while in the country. So this is a chance to, in a short paragraph, summarize what you would plan to do beyond the classroom. And they will also ask you about your plans upon return to the U.S. And they're doing this in part to see if the experience kind of lines up with what you want to do afterward. Now, there doesn't, I mean, not everybody's going to be teaching English after doing the English teaching assistantship, so it doesn't have to line up that directly. But they do typically like to see that the Fulbright experience is going to factor into your future in some way. If you were somebody who was going to do this year but then have no international contact for the rest of your career, that might be problematic to them. And all things being equal, they would typically go with the individuals who, see this as part of a commitment to engaging internationally. Once you receive one of these, you are a Fulbrighter. You are associated with the Fulbright program, and so they're interested in career paths that, might align with that in some way. Now, in addition to that information, you will list information about your honors, your awards, your employment experience. These are relatively short entries. Probably the most important part of the application, now we're getting into really, in addition to the abstract, the most important parts. We have the statement of grant purpose. And this is a one-page, single-spaced document, which you will compose and eventually upload into your application. And this is really where you make the case for why you would be an effective English teaching assistant in a particular country. So what I want you to note especially here are these questions that should be highlighted on the screen for you. And these are all taken from the Fulbright website. So they explicitly say this is what they want you to address. Now, you'll note that the first two questions are the why questions. Why do you want to do the ETA, and why are you applying to a specific country? And so what this means is that you should have reasons for this. And you want to be honest here, of course, but it's important that, before you write, I would sit down and come up with good answers to all of these questions. In terms of why you wish to undertake the ETA, it shouldn't just be something as simple as, well, I like teaching, or I like working with kids, or, you should have specific reasons. There are many things you could be doing with a year. Uh, why um, why is this particular opportunity of interest to you? And there could be a variety of reasons. It might be because of English teaching. It might be because you want an immersive international experience. It might be because you're really interested in a particular part of the world and you want to go there and learn more about the culture. There could be a number of reasons, but you want to be as specific as you can. You don't want your reasons here to be random, or you don't want the reasons to seem um, dull, or that you're just kind of doing this just because. You want to have strong reasons why you're doing the ETA and why you are choosing a specific country. There are about 70 countries where you could do an English teaching assistantship. Why is one standing out to you? And of course, some of this may be because of the profile that a particular country is looking for in their candidates, but this isn't really what they're asking here. They're asking why is Korea interesting to you? Why is Brazil of interest to you? And again, here you want specific reasons. You don't want it to seem like you could have picked any country. You want there to be very compelling reasons why a particular place is of interest to you. There could be personal reasons, there could be professional reasons. Again, the reasons are up to you, but you should have reasons. So it's important to think carefully about why you're interested in a certain place before beginning the statement. Now, the middle three questions here are three what questions that essentially are asking you what makes you think you'll be an effective English teaching assistant. So in the first two questions, you're talking about your motivation. Essentially, why are you doing this? And that's often what people talk about at the beginning of the statement of grant purpose. They have a paragraph or two where they address these questions. And then usually the middle of the statement of grant purpose addresses their experience, their qualifications. So the third thing they're asking, what you bring to the classroom that's going to enrich the experience of English language learners. So think about here, this isn't in the question, but you might think, what do you uniquely bring to the classroom that will enrich the learning experience? What do you specifically bring that other people might not? This is a chance to stand out among the crowd of applicants that they will receive. And for many countries, all these are competitive awards, so you do want to make yourself stand out. So what are you going to be able to do? If you for instance, if you are a musician, that might be something that you would bring to the classroom. You may be in a position to teach English through the use of music. If you're an artist, same thing. If you study literature, perhaps that's how you would do it. If you are interested in politics, perhaps you can use current events to engage the students. But think about what you specifically bring that's going to give these English language learners an interesting experience. Then they want to know what ideas you have for actually helping the students to learn English. Now, typically you will not be in charge of your own classroom. You will be an English teaching assistant, not an English teacher per se. But they would want to bring you there to be an effective assistant. So how would you contribute here? What ideas do you have? And this connects to the next question, what qualifications, training, or experiences do you have to prepare you to be an ETA? Any tutoring you have, any mentoring experience you have, any teaching experience you have, anything related either to language learning or to teaching generally, this is where you'd want to discuss that. You want to make sure that they know about this and that you make the connection between the experience you have and what you're proposing to do as an English teaching assistant. So for instance, if you have been a language tutor and you have noticed that certain techniques tend to be particularly effective, you might discuss that, and then talk about how you would incorporate those techniques into engaging with students in an English teaching situation. Even if you don't have teaching or tutoring experience, and some of the countries don't require that, think about what experiences you do have that might be relevant, given what they want the English teaching assistant to do. What connections can you make between what you've done and what you will be doing? Have you worked with international students? Have you been in cultural clubs? Think about things like this. In a way, the statement of grand purpose, as it says a little below here, is a cover letter for a job application to be an English teacher. And so you want to kind of connect the dots for them. Talk about, highlight key experiences you've had and convince them that these things have prepared you to be an English teaching assistant. Even if you don't think that, even if you haven't, for instance, taught English, which would be the easiest connection to make, think about what you have done and make the argument. Convince them that you would be good at this because of the things you've done. Then these last two questions kind of, they're really separate. The next to last one kind of asks you to look ahead a little bit. And this may come up in the why questions too, but how do you expect to benefit from this? So what is this going to do for you? And this is an opportunity to maybe bring in what you would plan to do after the English teaching assistantship. So you would expect from this assignment to get certain skills, to have certain experiences that would hopefully contribute to your trajectory in some way. Again, if you're planning to be an English teacher or teacher of English as a second language, the connection is pretty clear. But even if you're not, what kind of connections are there? If you're going to work internationally, perhaps this will give you an important cultural experience during which you will learn much about how to engage fruitfully with other cultures. Again, I do think this is tied up with why you would want to do this. What kind of benefits do you think you're going to get from this? And if you need to, read more about the English teaching assistantship experience. If you go online and search for Fulbright ETA, you can find blogs that people have kept about their experiences. See what it's like. Learn a little bit more about what this is actually like and see how they reflect on what they are doing. This may give you some ideas for how you would benefit. Then the final point here is what plans you have for civic engagement. Now, it's important to note that this is part of the statement of grand purpose. Typically, as I said, the initial paragraph or two deal with these first two questions. Then the middle paragraphs deal with the what questions, the third, fourth, and fifth here. Then often there's a paragraph or two at the end about what you will do beyond the classroom and kind of what your future plans are and how this all fits in. Again, this is only a page. You're going to have to very concisely discuss these questions, but think about what your plan is for civic engagement outside of the classroom. What will you do? And as I said earlier, you might even try to reach out to organizations with whom you might be able to work and see if they might have an availability or an opening, or if they would be interested in working with you, because that's something then you can discuss, and it does show an extra level of commitment that you've already looked into what you might do beyond the classroom. And of course, it might be taking classes, it might be taking language lessons, it might be participating in cultural activities, it might be volunteering. There's a large number of things you could do here. Now, I would encourage you to keep these questions by you as you're writing the statement of grand purpose, and when you have written a draft, make sure that you can go through that draft and identify where you've answered each of these questions. Sometimes people will get a different color highlighter or pen for each of the questions, and then they'll go through the statement and underline or highlight, okay, this is the why do you wish to undertake the opportunity answer. Here's where I talk about how I expect to benefit from the assignment. Make sure that you get all of this in here, because this is how they're going to be evaluating you. That shouldn't come as a surprise, because that's what they're telling you they're asking for. So keep these questions in the forefront of your mind as you work on this. And run your answers by people. You might even, again, just answer the questions first. Don't even write a statement. Just answer the questions. And then show them to people. Talk about them with people. See if your friends, your professors, see if we in CUSE think that these are compelling answers. Are they unique answers? Are they interesting? Now, as I said, this is a cover letter for a job application, so it's important to be specific, to be clear. This is not a personal essay. You'll have a chance for that. We'll talk about it in a moment. You want to give examples and details that answer these questions. Be as specific as you can. Also, keep in mind the particular preferences of the host country. If they say that they're looking for certain kinds of people, try to show them that you are that kind of person. Now, another point here is to remember that you want to reach and convince two audiences. And this gets a little bit into the review process. All of the Fulbright applications are first reviewed by a U.S. National Screening Committee. These are typically people who teach English as a second language or teach a language, and sometimes specialists in particular regions or on particular countries. They will review these applications and determine which ones to recommend to the next level. So they will largely be evaluating based on how well you address the questions, how compelling is your case for why you should be an English teaching assistantship. And again, these are people often who know what it takes to be an English teaching assistant, and so they're going to be really looking to see if you fit the bill. But then you also have to be able to convince readers in the host country, and these could be diplomats, business leaders, other kinds of important individuals in the host country. So you want to make sure that you're giving really compelling reasons for why you want to go to a specific place, because what the host country readers especially will be looking at is, why would we want to bring this person here? Is this person going to contribute to not only English teaching in our country, but to our country generally? This is a very important thing to keep in mind. You're trying to convince readers in the U.S. that you would be an effective English teaching assistant and an effective cultural ambassador, but you're trying to convince people in the host country that you're someone they should want to help fund to spend a year in their country. The final point here is to think of this proposal as a description of what you're going to do as a teacher and how you're prepared to carry out these plans. And this is kind of a good summary of some questions you might ask yourself before you begin writing the statement of grand purpose. Now, let's move on to talk about the personal statement. The formatting is the same. It's one page. And here there's less direction. They don't ask you to talk about specific questions, but they do say that they want a picture of yourself as an individual. They want to hear about your academic and personal development. What they're kind of trying to see here is what are some key experiences you've had that have led you to the place where you would want to apply for something like this. And these can be, of course, personal experiences. These are things that have happened to you that have really maybe made you realize you would want to apply for a Fulbright, or that you would be interested in teaching English, or that you are very interested in cultural exchange, or that you love language learning, or whatever it might be. Tell them your story here, but you'll have to, because you only have a page, select things from your story that are relevant to the Fulbright. Now, it's a personal essay. You can be creative, but again, think about what experiences have put you on the path toward a Fulbright, and think too about how the Fulbright is going to contribute to your future goals. So you're basically looking for a Fulbright-centered one-page autobiography. As it says here in the bottom, this essay should link together in a coherent manner your academic background, your proposed ETA experience, and your future goals. That's ultimately the kind of thing they want to see here. You want to paint a picture of someone who's going to be an effective cultural ambassador. Now let's talk a little bit about references here. Everybody will need 3 professional referees the English teaching assistants only get forms. They do not get recommendation letters. So you really aren't asking people to complete forms. And I'm going to try to bring up this form here. If it is available. And what I want you to notice when you look at the form, which we should have up here in just a minute, is that there are specific questions that you will be asked. Give me one moment here. Having some trouble here with the screen share. It is frozen, actually. Let me see if I can address this in some way. It appears that we might be stuck, that I'm not going to be able to pull this away. Let me try one more thing here. No, it appears that this is stuck on the screen, that we're not going to be able to get rid of it. So what I am actually going to do is close this video and start a part 2, and so that we can kind of reset everything here. And in part 2 we'll look at the reference form, and we will go sample application. So this video will end now, and look for part 2, which should be available at the same place you found this video.